You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 3rd of December 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's programme.
Any attack on any GCC country means it's an attack on all the GCC.
Gulf nations are banding together at a summit in Bahrain and plotting their common defence. We'll discuss whether Israel or the United States would support such moves. After that, we'll head to Design Miami with our design editor, Nick Manise, who is there for us. We'll discuss the birth of civilization and what it had to do with taxes. We'll hear from an Italian chef opening a restaurant inside London's National Gallery. And finally,
the key for travel over the next 2 or 3 years is that experience-led human element that is in danger of dying out because of the focus on AI.
We'll check in with Paul Charles at the international luxury travel market in Cannes. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to today's show. We're going to start off in the Gulf because the Gulf Cooperation Council's annual summit is in its 46th year. But there is something different about this one, with Gulf nations surveying their region after more than 2 years of war that pulled in multiple countries. They're pushing common defense high up the agenda this time, even considering the creation of an air defense network or shield to protect from future attacks. Well, joining me now is Damien McElroy, London Bureau Chief at the national newspaper from the UAE. Damien, great to have you on the show on this important day, though it is easy for me to say this summit is more significant than others. But how important is it from your perspective?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. It is, as you say, very significant, a landmark point in the history of the GCC, I think, because, as you say, there's been 2 years of war and there's been some quite momentous events that has led the members of the GCC to want to bolster their defences and to assert that they are united and to show that they can come together both in the defence realm but also on foreign policy principles and really give that display of complete unity that they want to show to the world after the events of the last couple of years.
And tell us more about those foreign policy principles when you put it that way. What are those principles for the Gulf nations?
Well, one is very much to show that the region can work together and can have a united stance. And, after the attacks on Qatar earlier in the year, not just from Israel, but also from Iran, the issue of a defense shield has come to the forefront. But behind that, there is the issues thrown up by the Gaza war and the need for a long-term solution that the Gulf countries think their heft can push the situation towards. So, very much what the Arab countries have been offering in terms of establishing a Palestinian state that is contiguous and stands up in the world, and to show that the voice of the region can drive towards that.
Now, you did mention Qatar there, and particularly these attacks on Qatar from both Iran and Israel, opposite sides, if you will, of the spectrum, is part of the prompting here of common defense and this shield. Gulf nations simply being tired of kind of being caught in the middle. There's also just the impunity of it from both Iran and Israel.
Well, impunity is a very good word, and it's a very good word to remember if one is looking at why a summit is addressing these issues. Where do you start from? You start from the point that if you are united and you can take concrete steps, then you can create a security umbrella that works in your interests. And over time, as that is built up and as that stance becomes more credible, then the impunity goes away, and you can forestall the sort of things that we've seen in earlier in the year at the tail end of the summer. And so that's very much on the mind of the six leaders as they assemble and as they're now obviously giving their speeches and setting out their positions.
So setting out positions is one thing. The symbolism around common defense is another. But when it comes to the practical side, you did mention this air defense shield. How serious is that idea? How realistic is it that something like that could truly be enacted?
Well, at one level, you're talking about technicalities, aren't you? The systems, where they come from, how they're ordered. Does the system work in all the scenarios that are going to confront the region? So those things are what have to be trashed out. That's why you have a summit. That's why you have officials come together to really find pathways and agreed, to use a dreadful word, to agreed modalities of such a system so that it can coordinate. And that, one of the things about the GCC is that it has a very advantageous geography, and so it can pull together when there is collective security and collective will. And so using those advantages and using the technology that is available, creating this missile shield is not beyond what is current capabilities or anything. It just means the governments have to come together and agree on it and resolve to implement it.
You need the political will, in other words, as well, but you also need perhaps the will from outside powers, which does bring us to the US. I was curious if you sensed there too a shift maybe in support for Gulf nations under the Trump administration, because creating a shield like this that would prevent possible Israeli attacks in future sounds like something that would have been just unimaginable even a few years ago without US backing.
Well, yes. I mean, if you go back to the almost day and night approach of the Biden administration versus what we've seen in the Trump administrations, then, the GCC countries have a lot to work with Washington under President Trump. And by his intervention in the summertime, I would say probably both ways, the US leader did show that he wanted to be decisive in what was happening with Israel, Iran, Qatar, in all those developing situations. The US was very active, and it was also willing to put itself on the line in a way that would not have happened, I don't think, under Biden, and certainly would not have been something that could have been relied on, and would have been, the Biden administration would not have given the same degree of confidence, I think. And so that is an important factor at this time, allied with the ambitions of the Trump administration in terms of missile defenses and the technology of developing these shields, which have gone to a new level in Washington since Mr. Trump came back.
Certainly true. Missile defenses are the word in everybody's mouth at the moment. Damien McElroy, London Bureau Chief at The National, thank you very much for joining us. And now here's Anita Riota with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has rejected the latest version of Donald Trump's peace plan. This comes after 5 hours of talks in Moscow with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and former advisor Jared Kushner. In further remarks, the Kremlin says Russia is ready if Europe wants war, leaving the negotiations no closer to a breakthrough. Israel says the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt will reopen in the coming days. This will allow residents to leave for medical treatment and travel under an EU-supervised arrangement. The move is part of the current ceasefire deal with Hamas, but is being overshadowed by a dispute over partial remains that Israel says do not match two hostages still held in Gaza. And Zara owner Inditex has reported a strong start to the winter shopping season, with November sales rising about 10.6% and beating analysts' expectations. The performance, which includes Black Friday, marks a positive moment for Europe's fragile consumer sector and has sent Inditex shares up to a 9-month high. Those are today's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Anita. Let's head over to Miami now, because Design Miami is in full swing, and here to tell us all about it is Nick Manise, Monocle's design editor. Good morning, early morning, Nick, to Miami.
Good morning, Chris. Thank you for acknowledging the effort I've made to get up early and say hello to you. So I appreciate you putting that on the record.
Well, I think that is important, and I wanted to actually start at the end to that point. I'm curious how the parties were last night and how you're feeling.
Pretty good. I'm feeling okay. I'm robust, Christopher, to say the least. No, it's good. I mean, it is another party moment for the design scene. I think it's a little bit more casual. There are some dinners kind of spread across the city, but there's certainly been a little bit of dive bar action, which is always fun. It's funny how city to city, I guess, events are represented, and certainly there's some glitz and glam in Miami, but there's also a lot of kind of down to earth enjoyment taking place.
I mean, that's what Americans do well, the dive bar, isn't it? But let's look a little bit further back at your day yesterday. Tell us about what Design Miami is about today. I understand part of it, a showcase of collectible design. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, I mean, collectible design is such a beautifully vague term. I mean, it can be everything from, I guess, one-off bespoke pieces created by, new designers this year, through to, kind of rare vintage pieces or antique pieces even from mid-century designers and beyond. In short, they're kind of covetable, mostly one-off pieces, and it's this sector that's growing hugely. You can even kind of see it in auction houses, Christie's, Phillips, Sotheby's. In June this year, they reported a year-on-year increase in design sales of 62.3%. Design Miami keeps its cards a little bit closer to its chest, but it is the biggest collectible, or at least the mother of all collectible kind of design fairs. It's maybe not the largest, but it's certainly kind of the flagship event, and it's celebrating its 20th anniversary here in Miami right now. So what we're seeing is works by a host of different galleries from across the globe, kind of presented to buyers who I guess are looking for pieces to finish homes or add to institutional collections, those sorts of things.
And give us a little rundown of who's attending over there. Who have you been speaking with, Nick?
I mean, I've been speaking to a lot of gallerists. There are certainly some designers here presenting works with the gallerists. Gare Signé, an amazing Parisian outfit, debuting in Miami for the first time, and actually picked up the award for Best New Gallery. They're presenting works by the likes of Marie and Alexander, talking to them, I guess, about the importance of being here and presenting their work. You've got, obviously, buyers kind of floating through. There's a lot of sunglasses inside. There are, maybe being a little bit spicy here, there are lots of older men with younger women, which is always kind of fun there. And then there's the next generation that are coming through. And it's quite amazing. Jen Roberts, the Design Miami CEO, spoke about this. Collectible design seems to be really resonating with Gen Z in terms of they're looking for wares and works that are a little bit more unique, a little bit maybe less mass produced, and we're certainly sort of seeing that in the turnout. So there's also quite a young demographic too.
A young and older demographic. I'm going to skip past part of your comments there, Nick. I mean, one other thing that you wanted to talk about, there was this announcement that Design Miami is going to launch in Dubai. I suppose everybody is going to Dubai these days. How significant is it for Design Miami to be there?
I mean, it's massive. I think for, we talk about collectible design growing as a market. I think also the golf is growing in confidence as a design market. You can kind of look at things like Dubai Design Week, which continues to go from strength to strength, but that seems to be more about trade and more about architectural innovation versus the announcement of Design Miami going to Dubai. This is the first significant kind of a collectible design moment in the Gulf, and it's about Dubai joining the roster of cities like Miami and Paris. It's sort of, I guess, a demonstration that, yeah, this is a legitimate design destination. And I think that's why it's so significant. And it's that whole thing of bringing design to more people across the globe. This isn't something that's going to be safeguarded in the likes of Miami and Paris and Milan, but something that's spreading further afield.
Okay, now back to the collectible design that you've been talking about, Nick. Give us some of your favorites of what you've seen. I'm guessing that all of this is just slightly out of your own budget, but what did you like?
Just slightly, but it's just on that. I think it's also about moments of inspiration. I mean, there's a Notori Sotsas wardrobe, one of only two made in the world. They were prototypes being sold by a gallery from a gallery from Madrid. It's going for about $400,000, but it's this idea. If we're looking at things in terms of accessibility and inspiration, it's looking at its curves, the way it kind of folds. It's made from this kind of like fiberglassy looking material. That's certainly one of my favorites. It's about bringing play to the bedroom in the form of a beautiful wardrobe for your boudoir. Then you've got someone like Mathieu Luna, an amazing contemporary designer. He's made a few pieces that have really jumped out at me. My favorite was this kind of sculptural green sofa where one of the cushions was actually a handbag that could provide amazing lumbar support, but maybe you could also store your TV remote in there or hide your book away, but it's readily accessible when you need it. So there are kind of pieces like that are playful, that are pushing boundaries, that really speak to me.
Practical collectible design. Nick Manise, thank you very much for joining us, our design editor in Design Miami. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You are back with The Briefing. I'm Chris Chermak, and we're going to take you back now all the way to the start of civilization. There has long been this debate about how large-scale societies began as opposed to the sort of hunter-gatherer ethos spread across the world in the olden days. Historians have often suggested that agriculture was the cause for larger societies, but new research suggests it was something else that we are incredibly familiar with today. That would be taxes. Well, joining me now is Dr. Kit Opie, Senior Lecturer in Evolutionary Anthropology at the University of Bristol. Dr. Opie, thank you so much for coming on the show to discuss your research here. It frankly left me wondering, is that old adage of death and taxes being the only thing we know absolutely true?
Yes, Chris, absolutely. At least for the last 5,000 years, that is.
Only for the last 5,000 years. I mean, that gives us a good amount of time to have taxes in our frame. Tell us more about your research and how you came up with this. I mean, I understand, as I mentioned, the point of your research is that you could find examples of agriculture actually before bigger societies developed. Taxation was the thing that actually organized societies.
Yes, so agriculture had started probably 4,000 years before the first states started to emerge. And so the traditional view, as you explained it, seemed to have, some holes in it. So a different view was suggested, that it wasn't just agriculture, but it was what's called intensive agriculture. So fertilization, irrigation, and so on were the things that were needed in order to produce a surplus in order for a state to function. But a more recent view that's been gaining ground was that it wasn't just agriculture, it was particularly grains. So what we're talking about here is rice, wheat, and maize. And it was those particular crops that were very, very useful in order to build states because they were taxable. And the reason that they are particularly taxable is that they grow in fixed fields, they grow above ground, they ripen at a predictable time, and in particular, they are really good for storage. So your listeners will know that, if you have a potato in your cupboard, very quickly it'll start sort of growing roots and things like that, and you don't want to keep it for a long time. Grains, on the other hand, can last for centuries, millennia even, and still be usable after that time. So it was the taxability that was absolutely key for the states to start to emerge.
I am curious, Dr. Opie, how this I don't know, if I go back and imagine oneself in that time, if you were used to being a hunter-gatherer, what would have attracted you to this? Was it sort of that somebody started creating all this grain and then basically saying, hey, I'm going to offer it to you, but at a price? Is that good for you?
Yeah, probably not. Mostly people sort of from kind of 10,000 years ago or so would have been doing what's called swidden agriculture, i.e. they would have been using all sorts of different things. So they would have been may have been a number of crops, probably wild crops, sort of fruit, vegetables, roots and tubers, grains, which are actually grasses, wild grasses kind of growing, which they would have used to supplement their hunting and their gathering. So what it seems like, and certainly this is James Scott's view, is that they were forced into growing grain. This was not choice.
So we're talking more protection racket here in a way than government in the traditional sense.
I'm afraid we are, because grains are not actually they were not about being healthy foods. So we have the advice these days about making sure that you eat your 5 a day. That's because grains aren't part of that 5 a day. They were actually very bad for people's health. People probably shrunk about 5 centimeters. They had shorter lives, and their lives were unhealthier once they started growing grain. And the interesting thing when we were testing these different hypotheses was that the growing of other crops, so fruit, vegetables, roots, tubers, and so on, actually dropped off very sharply with the emergence of states. So what was clearly happening was the states were, or these protection rackets were stopping the growing of other types of agriculture because they wanted the grains to be grown.
Just finally, Dr. Opie, I mean, was any of this positive? Can we put a positive spin on back in those days? Were all of these states just protection rackets at the end of the day, or were there maybe some evidence of some societies that built up with something a bit more positive? We've got this grain for you. We'd like to build it all together.
Well, I mean, it was very successful. Let's put it that way. So, I mean, now there are virtually no societies that are not in some way run by or included in states. And up until now, they have been very successful. What I think is quite interesting is that at the moment, they are under real threat. And quite a few of the things that are threatening them are actually to do with what happened right at the start. So writing was a very important way of collecting taxes or making sure that taxes were paid and so on. We're now losing that as an information system as we move to digital and then to AI. And that seems to be causing states quite a lot of trouble, as is crypto currencies, as is globalization, as is climate change. So I think the best thing maybe out of this is to give us an idea of what is now challenging the state, and what we can perhaps do about that.
Dr. Kit Opie, Senior Lecturer in Evolutionary Anthropology at the University of Bristol. Thank you very much for joining us today. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Now to a little bit of news for the foodies out there, because the Italian chef Giorgio Locatelli has opened a new restaurant called Locatelli at London's National Gallery. Monocle's Fernando Augusto Pacheco spoke with the chef during a recent visit to Midori House.
One of the greatest advantages of being part of the team of the National Gallery is then you get in half an hour before everybody. So the gallery is open at 10, and you at 9:15, you can walk in the gallery. The lights are on, and you're there on your own with this unbelievable painting.
So beautiful.
And it's amazing, you know. It's one of those things that it really is. When the paintings are beautiful already when there is people. But when you're there on your own, somehow they get this magical sort of, almost they talk to you. And yes, I do kind of like, I got really fascinated about different type of art, because obviously some of the Italian art that was there, I knew what it was, so I was always a little bit in love with Caravaggio and what he did. And so the dinner Manus, which inspired that dinner, bits by bits, from the bread to the wine to the actually chicken and all the ingredients, and they are on a painting, were on the dishes than we did, and then finishing with the idea of this bloody dessert, with the beetroot, was incredible. It was very nice to work with the boys and take them, and the girls, because the chef is actually a girl, and take her upstairs to the gallery and look at the painting together and try to get some idea, and so yes, the process was very artistically. It was the art that really inspired the menu, and now I kind of like we start to look. I was with Andrew Graham Dixon, which is a old friend of mine. We were walking around and we stopped to see the Velázquez, because there is the Venere of Velázquez, which is obviously the best looking bottom that you can see in London. That one is that, and it's just such a beautiful painting. And then before that, you have like three. Then they are like they call it the bodega. So there was like when Velázquez was about 20 before he got picked up by the king. He used to do this painting that were kind of like religious related, but also with the set. And so you have one with fish, one with garlic, one. And Andrew was taking me through, because you see, it's like kind of like when you have somebody explain you the painting, then you really kind of like get an inspiration from that. So kind of understanding it is very, very important. So I was yesterday I was there for half an hour looking again and thinking like maybe that's what we do. We'll do a Velázquez dinner and we'll do the same thing. The idea is brilliant. Then, the people come, they have something like they gather, they have a drink or something like that, and then we can take them up, look at the three painting, and then come back and then go through the menu with them.
And you have so much material there to do that, right?
Amazing. It's like, the Dutch are incredible, all the early Dutch art. And so there is so much there that you can pick. And then sometimes, it's not even, because at the moment almost I'm only kind of like focusing on the actual food that is there. I'm sure them slowly will come up, then we'll pick the emotion. And it's nice to see then some of the guys and some of the girls that work for us, when they have this little break in the afternoon, instead than go out or go smoking or whatever, or go to the pub or they go out to the gallery. And so you think like, wow, we started maybe something really nice in this, it's working.
And food-wise, you mentioned that this is not, a new look on the Locatelli.
No.
This is has its own kind of identity as well. I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about that. You said you wanted something a bit more, it doesn't necessarily need to be super, crazy expensive, but, hearty, simple, but delicious at the same time. Well, I was looking at the menu. It was like the filetto di cernia, the tortelloni di zucca. I was like, wow.
Well, obviously we will be very seasonal all the time because the menu is not so big. In Locanda we had 36 dishes, and then it would be 12 dessert and the ice cream on top. So you're going up to 48 dishes altogether. And that's a lot of work, but it's like with 26 chefs, and we bake the bread and everything else as well. Here we are a little bit restricted for the space that we have, so we have to be a little bit more direct on that. And we will work. Obviously, Cersei would like to change the menu only 4 times, but I want to at least change it 8 times a year, because I think there is quite a lot. I didn't think about it, or didn't expect it to be so much return business. That's a lot of people that comes almost every month. And so now then they are 6 months also then we are open. We kind of like see the frequency of these people. Then they coming in. Some people come twice a month. And these are the people that really is a leisure. So they coming in, maybe there is the new exhibition, then they come for lunch, or they come to see something or in the gallery and they come for lunch, or otherwise they meet before, they have lunch, and then they go to the gallery. So, and this is like there is a pattern to it, which, I thought like we open a restaurant, every day would be somebody different from all over the world. But the booking is going well, and, we kind of like holding it down to 30-40%. And we allowed 60% of the restaurant to be ready for the walk-in. Because I think this is a very important thing. And it doesn't have to feel like, I like this natural idea, like in Italy, you don't book. Of course, in Michelin star restaurant, things like that, now they go to all in at you and everything. But, I remember that, like on Sunday, in our restaurant, no one books. And we knew that we were going to do 100 people. But no one books. Nobody picked up the phone and called, can you keep me a table? Unless there was a big celebration that they needed a cake. Well, then they would maybe come around and say something like, can I have the cake or whatever, because I need a bigger table. But otherwise, the table of 4, 6, a family, things like that, they didn't book. And, and I like this spontaneity of having a lunch. What we doing? Let's have a lunch. And you go for a lunch, and it's a nice lunch. That is life. Like this idea that I got to be there at 8 o'clock, I got to be dressed so much, I got to leave at 9:30, and I'm having a minimum spending. Like, man, it's like that's not hospitality. Hospitality is about you. The door is open and you hospitable.
The Italian chef Giorgio Locatelli there. Totally agree with him on all that stuff about reservations. Speaking with Fernando Augusto Pacheco, this is The Briefing. And finally, on today's show, it is off to the Côte d'Azur for the international luxury travel market. Monocle Radio is in Cannes, speaking to some of the biggest names in the luxury hospitality sector. And Emma Nelson caught up with Paul Charles, founder and CEO of the PC Agency. She started by asking him what travel brands need to do better to be better.
I think, honestly, it's about being honest and natural to yourself as a brand. Too many brands in the past have followed the herd, have tried to adapt perhaps too much out of COVID, for example, and become brands that aren't true to themselves and aren't going back to their DNA and why they were created in the first place. And now it's about offering experiences and belief to your guests, whether they're guests on a plane or in a hotel or on a cruise line or in a destination. And it's about being normal and natural. And too many brands still don't get that.
It's that problem, though, that we've talked about this quite a lot on Monocle Radio, about it is too easy to fall into the tropes. The lady brushing her hand naturally through a field of lavender, the back with the hot stones, that kind of stuff. And when you hear the words authenticity and experience, and even worse, customer journey, it can actually make your stomach flip.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that when a brand tells its story, it does so without falling into all those potholes?
Let's remember that brands are selling human happiness. That's what they're doing in the travel sector. They're selling a dream that we will be happy and relaxed and enjoy our 2 weeks away or 10 days away or whatever it might be, or weekend away. So I think many of them fall into that trap of showing the beach or the lady walking through the swimming pool just naturally.
I've never seen a lady walk through a swimming pool, but I don't know what you're telling your
trying to swim. But I think they fall into that because it's seen as fun and enjoyable. But I don't think there's enough emotion in travel, and that's what the next few years is about. It's experiences that are bringing emotional joy to us as we spend more, and we are spending more per night on our trips. All the statistics show that we are spending a lot more money than we used to. So if we're spending more, we need more emotion to be shown to attract us into that particular destination.
Give me an example of that.
Well, a really good example, I think, is when you check into a hotel, that many of them are moving down the route of AI or remote check-ins, and they're losing that sense of place when you check in. So you arrive, you often could be anywhere in the world. You're in a templated environment sometimes, especially with bigger chains. You're not getting a sense of place or people that are behind the brand. So hotels in particular need to go back to welcoming you properly when you check in, but not overdoing it. They need to give you a really welcoming, joyful experience that is full of belief and emotion.
The experience bingo, you know that.
Well, they're playing it sometimes, just moving you through because you're just another customer. But actually, they've got to think about you as a guest if they're to win you back and get your repeat business.
So where are the new, that repeat business is one thing, but also this is a whole place about finding new markets. Where are the choicest morsels in 2026?
There's no doubt that because we're all yearning for more experiences or memorable experiences, we want to go to places that we haven't been to before or that are off the beaten track. So you're starting to see destinations all around the world like Guatemala or Azerbaijan or Finland that are just upping their game in terms of attracting people at different times of the year. Finland's a really good example, and I know Monocle does a lot on Finland, but that's a place always thought of as a winter destination, but they've really got to push themselves as a summer destination. So they're winning many people to stay over the summer that traditionally would have gone to Greece or Portugal or Spain, but now is too hot at that time of year.
And does that mitigate against all the cries about over-tourism?
It does to some extent, and I think the problem with over-tourism is it's slightly overdone. Essentially, it became a fad to talk about over-tourism, but many countries are dealing with it. They are moving more people into the regions. So Spain is an example where they're trying to move more people out of Barcelona and into the middle of the country. Ireland's the same, moving people out of Dublin into the west of the country to experience more of what Ireland is truly about. So I think countries are starting to get to grips with that over-tourism point because they realise they went too far. They're clamping down on things like Airbnb in some cases, for example, as well, to reduce the numbers going into major hubs. But the key for travel over the next 2 or 3 years is that experience-led human element that is in danger of dying out because of the focus on AI. And that's what travel brands have to get back to.
Paul Charles there in conversation with our Emma Nelson. The Monocle team is on the ground at the International Luxury Travel Market in Cannes until Thursday. Swing by and say hello if you're there. You can also sign up to our daily newsletter for more from the ILTM. That's all the time we have for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Hassan Anderson. Our researcher was Joanna Moser, and our studio manager was Lily Austin. The Briefing is back tomorrow at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.